Hey
Morning, Peter.
everyone, it's Peter Crewe-Brown here. Welcome to another episode of the Mind Over Matters podcast by Pair Planning. The topic for today is businesses fail because people stop asking questions with Jeremy King, who is best described as a serial entrepreneur. A bit more about Jeremy. Jeremy started his career in photojournalism in London in the mid-1980s. He was sent to the Brisbane Expo in 1988, and he worked in ad agencies for the next 8 years. He then worked for Kerry Packer for 2 years in mergers and acquisitions, and I'm sure that was an interesting time for him. Jeremy then went to New York and worked for Time Warner, where he fell in love with retailing. On his return to Australia, he went into fashion, opening the first Insane store in the Sydney CBD. From that start, Jeremy opened 6 more stores and sold the group in 2003. Jeremy then changed a little and moved to cosmetics retailing, founding the Gloss Cosmetics Group, which grew to 63 stores across Australia. Gloss ran for 17 years and closed its operations in 2018, with turnover at its peak of $60 million each year. So about today's podcast. When Jeremy started in retail, he was a rookie retailer and had a problem knowing what questions to ask. So he asked heaps of questions and listened carefully for the right answers. Jeremy learned the lessons of humility in hearing the truth from speaking to experts. He was never scared to admit when he did not know something. This will be the focus of our podcast discussion today. So Jeremy, turning to you now that I've done the introduction.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction.
Please share with the audience what makes you tick and who in the business community you serve. I know that you're in a period of, I guess, in between things, but yeah, maybe in the most recent work you've done.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very conscious of your audience, and you mentioned the audience for your podcast. So I think it would be good to mention that I've been involved in multiple businesses over the years. Hospitality is quite a big area at the moment, but I've been involved in everything from manufacturing, design of products, distribution, retail. I mean, across all countries, and certainly a lot in Australia, with up to 60 retail stores, bricks and mortar stores. So that's kind of a bit of a summary of that. But at the moment, I'm focusing more on commercial property and certainly on hospitality industries.
And so you've moved out of the sort of cosmetics and fashion retailing that I guess was the main focus of what you did through the 2000 to 2018 timeframe.
Yeah, I mean, I started with fashion. I tried one store in CBD Sydney, as you mentioned, many years ago. And we literally started with one store and popped it up just off Pitt Street, opened, and it was a success. So, I mean, that's how it started. After a long corporate career and running through advertising agencies and mergers and acquisitions and Time Warner head of marketing, and coming out of advertising, I wanted to just do something for myself. And I've still been quite young back then. And I literally opened a fashion store with no experience at all. I mean, I've never been involved with female fashion, but I felt I had a couple of contacts and had met people involved in fashion. And I thought it's an area that might work quite well in Australia. So I tried it and it did work.
Fantastic. I guess, moving a little away from retailing, most people in the Australian community would have heard of Kerry Packer, and I know that you worked for him for a couple of years. Are there any interesting stories during that time that you'd care to share with the audience?
Probably not. I mean, it was hard work. Kerry's got a reputation, and that's exactly how you work. I mean, you work very, very hard, long hours, and it was a good time. I mean, it taught me a lot about moving quickly, and we were doing mergers and acquisitions, so it was a different area than retail. But we were involved in news agents and opening news agents, and so there was a lot of leasing. I did a lot of commercial leasing through that period, a lot of restructuring, and Kerry pushes hard and gets results, and I was thankful for the experience, that's for sure.
A steep learning curve, no doubt.
Yeah, every
and
day
I'm sure
was
it stood you in good stead for what came next, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were talking more about retail. I mean, retail bricks and mortars, which has changed more into a lot of online now with discussions I'm having these days, are more about online. But bricks and mortars is so important. I mean, one of the things I keep saying to people is, you've got to get the bricks and mortars right. It's your brand, it's your look, it's your feel, it's the touch points where people come in and discuss products with you. It's interesting how so many conversations are online where the website and the marketing does the work, but the bricks and mortars are still so important. And there's some amazing retailers in Australia, so it's still working very, very well.
Yeah, well, that's a great, I guess, shot in the arm for bricks and mortar retail, because there's so much talk about the move to online. But at the end of the day, retail is a tangible thing, and you need to have a presence for many types of retailing. People want to touch stuff.
They do, and I think the convenience of online is definitely always is going to improve and increase. And of course, it's so fast now. The delivery times are so fast. But I'm actually in a shopping centre today. I'm actually at Pacific Fair at a gym. You can probably see the protein powders behind me. I'm about to hit the gym after this, and I've been walking around the shopping centre early this morning, and I was here yesterday training. There's some beautiful shops and beautiful presentations, and without that, for me anyway, it's not a full retail offer. I think for me, just online has a purpose, but having a combination, I mean, omni-channel, all the buzzwords they use, but having a combination of online and bricks and mortars is to me the ultimate goal.
Yeah. So Jeremy, now that we've, I guess, just covered a bit of an introduction and spoken about your experience and your career so far, I just want to move into a bunch of questions get into the substance of the podcast. The first question I had is, you might remember we did some work together many years ago, I think about 15. And I guess my question for you is, what were you looking for when we first met? Because I know it was in the early days of Gloss, and I'm always curious to know what had you come looking for someone with my background.
Well, I mean, it goes back to I'd already been involved with Insane, which grew to about just under 20 stores, and I sold it to BBL Capital, and then I had a period of 6 months, and I sat back and invented Gloss. So I really sat back. I developed the brand, I developed the look and the feel, what I wanted, the store design. I sat back and I thought, okay, well, I'll do one store and incubate it for 6 months, and then move from there. I think we met because I reached out. I wanted to find someone to really look after what I called a very young team at our very young head office, which was literally in Alexandria. We opened a small office with a small crew of people that were very young and inexperienced. And I wanted someone with a more mature look at it. And also, Peter, I wanted someone there that I wanted to get to the storefront. I wanted to meet customers. I've never been involved in cosmetics before that time. I wanted to see what the customer looked like, how they spoke. I wanted to really be out of the office. I don't think being in the office is a great idea when you're opening a business. And to answer your question, is that I really wanted someone there to overview some of the younger teams that we were building, and it worked well. I mean, it was a really good setup.
And I would have to say, with the benefit of hindsight, I've been doing this type of advisory work since 2003, which is, I guess, coincides with you kind of getting into Gloss. And it was one of the more exciting organizations I worked with in those early days of Gloss. And a lot of it was, a bit seat of your pants stuff, making stuff up as you go, but, obviously putting in place systems and getting as robust as possible with your ambitious growth plans. And it was an experience that I really enjoyed. And
Oh, thanks.
Of all the entrepreneurs I've met over my many years in business, certainly the time working with you sticks out in my mind as something particularly exciting. It was a crazy time, and I know that you went on and created some great things.
Yeah, well, I mean, thank you very much for the compliment. I'm glad we enjoyed your company as well. I mean, the reason why it was seat of your pants and so exciting was I'd moved into an industry that I saw was massive potential. Obviously, it was budget cosmetics. So it had never really been done. There was no Sephora, there was no Mecca around much. And of course, the pharmacies had not got into cosmetics so much. So really, Gloss was the only standalone cosmetics store. And it was fast. I mean, I incubated the first store. I think you came along at the end of the first store.
Yeah.
And I incubated the first store with some basic systems and basic accounts, basic supply chain management account system. And really then, as soon as I saw the first store working and the turnover was, it was very strong and the margins were strong, and I worked it out. And then I really wanted to open 10 stores. And, to open 10 stores in 12 months, I think we did it in 16 months. I needed to go out, see the shopping centers, walk the shopping centers, talk to leasing people, and get an idea of where these would go. And I obviously then, if you're back at the head office, it would seem fast and furious, I'm sure. But we put some good systems in place. I think one of the reasons why this podcast really interests me was one of the things I wanted to get across was I'm a really systemized person. So one of the things you and I both agreed on was the second we met was we needed very, very strong systems. 2003, the technology was just coming in, software, Great Plains, Pronto, SAP was obviously an option, but it was a very expensive option. So we started off a little smaller. You and I, we sat down and we absolutely said, right, it's almost 10 o'clock Monday morning. These are the numbers we look at. 11 o'clock, let's look at this. We were looking at very, very, very tightly at GP on every 8,000 SKUs in this business. Yeah. We were looking at every single margin on every product, and we had very set times to do it in. And it was one thing I can get across, and I see it. I still do a little bit of consulting, especially over this last 12 months with COVID, which I didn't mention to you when we spoke before. I've literally worked for some of the biggest retailers in the world, and I won't mention any names, but because obviously there's confidential agreements in place. But 100 million to really $1 billion companies. And what I still find when I go in there is the reporting is not consistent, and it always surprises me. Big or small companies, and it has to be consistent. It has to be so accurate. If you can walk into any shop, clothing store, if you walk around any shop and you walk into a shop and they're out of stock of something, or they look on their POS system and they don't know why the item's not on the floor or where it is in the storeroom. This is the inconsistencies that I've been talking about. It has to be live. One of the things with Gloss was it was a live inventory system 20 years ago. And so every single item, we knew what was in the store, on the shelf, what position it was on the shelf, the rate, everything was done, replenished 3 times a week to store. The systems were so tight that it became a business that you just could not understand straight away by looking at reports. And I find that's a big problem even now. And this is 20 years later, I'm still finding a problem in businesses.
Yeah, I remember those heady days. There was lots of, cobbling things together, and big focus on dashboards and knowing what is happening in the business by store every sort of minute of the day. Jeremy, just moving on to the next question. How and why did you move to cosmetics after working in fashion at Insane?
Okay, it's quite an interesting story. I've never told it before, but what happened was when we sold Insane, I got an offer for it, and through the due diligence process, there was obviously a handover period. Insane was a pure female fashion store. Most stores turned over between 2 and 3 million. There were stores around Australia. What I used to do was have a very, very small cosmetics offer on the counter. So it would be black eyeline pencil, lip gloss. It was very small, and it was a company in America. We used to import it called NYX, and it was sold, you know, on the counter. We never paid that much attention to it. When I went to sell Insane, what I noticed was in the sale process was those items were actually moving very, very quickly. And when I spoke to previous staff members, they identified it as an area. So I literally looked at cosmetics, but I wanted to go into the value market. Obviously, I had plenty of time between. I had about 6 months between Insane and Gloss opening to really work a plan through. And obviously, product planning is essential when you're opening a cosmetic store. So I mean, that's how we found out. We found out by accident that cosmetics was obviously a huge area to go into.
And I mean, how did you go about, you know, launching the first Gloss store? I mean, I guess merchandising, getting your product organized, those would have been big challenges, and you'd only worked in much smaller volumes up until that time.
Well, fashion clothing is completely different, but we were manufacturing the clothing in China and designing it. So it was actually quite a very vertical business. What I decided to do with the cosmetics is have a split approach. I would have Australian brands, Chi Chi, Sugar Baby, Model Co. I would have that offer in the store as established brands in Australia. And we were also offering American brands as well. Yeah. But I wanted to manufacture, cosmetics. Obviously with one store, you know, we're very difficult to manufacture cosmetics, but obviously as we expanded, we grew our manufacturing. So we had a house brand. So the business was split between house brands and Australian boutique brands, if you like. Yeah. And it didn't take long. I mean, we were bringing in, one year we brought in 1 million black eyeliner pencils. I remember that year where we hit 1 million of one single SKU.
That's extraordinary.
I mean, yeah, it was. I mean, the volume you can do in Australia is quite high at the lower price point. And yeah. I love the manufacturing side. And obviously, as you know, and I'm sure you had your hands on my reports back then, the margin was very good if you were manufacturing. We were manufacturing in China and we were importing cosmetics in for what, 20 years. So, and of course, the private label came off that. One of the things, Peter, over the years, I split the wholesale and manufacturing away from the retail. It's something that your basic customers might understand too, is that really having it all in one office didn't really work for us. We needed a massive warehouse. It was 17,000 square meters. It was custom built. We were manufacturing, designing. We had, you know, you'd have designers of products, so you could design the caps on a lipstick and design the logo. So it reached that point very quickly. Within 5 to 6 years of opening, we're in that area, and then we started offering private labels so we could wholesale cosmetics as well. So the business ended up retail, online, retail bricks and mortars, and then also manufacturing, private label, and then a house brand for Gloss.
And a lot of your online, you were one of the, I guess, early movers in that space.
Yeah,
20 years ago.
Early. Yeah, we had to write software. I mean, we literally had to code software. There wasn't a package out there. You could do it. I think for the lower price cosmetics offers back then and even to today, it's a tough online product because it's sub $10 and sub $12. And obviously postage can kill that. But, you know, we were very early in it and we always kept up an online offer. And I always saw that was going to be a massive part of the business, more in the prestige product. And I'm sure I'd love to see Sephora's online offers, but I'm pretty sure their online is a huge part of their business.
Yeah. And so towards the end of your time with Gloss in 2018, were you doing a great deal of online sales?
No, I didn't focus on it. Again, that sub $10 category is tough online. You know, the consumer would have to multiple purchase and build it up to get the postage to cover. And I think also with TikTok and Instagram and the you know, Jeffree Star, if you look at some of these wonderful influencers that are out there with cosmetics, I mean, they've just done an amazing job. Yeah. Item Beauty on TikTok has launched 12 months ago, and the American beauty industry, they call it masstige now, this sort of lower bracket cosmetics. That market has moved more to an influencer TikTok area, and they're doing an amazing job. I mean, it's just I mean, the amount of work they do is amazing. The marketing is phenomenal.
Sure. Excellent. Look, just changing direction a little. I hear that commercial leasing can be a real problem in retail. We did speak about the importance of bricks and mortar.
That's a
so I guess
change.
My question for you is, what was your strategy at Glass regarding your commercial leasing needs?
I think I mean, for bricks and mortars for commercial leasing, I think the first thing that's really important, and I liked your title today, is ask questions to people who know. The people who know and they're not your enemy are the shopping centers. I mean, I had a great relationship with Westfields and still do, Lend-Lease, AMP, Gandel, Vicinity. These people are your friends and you need to talk to them. I mean, commercial leasing is not complicated. I mean, obviously you've got to find the right location and the deal's got to be right. But also the legals is really understand the legals and the contracts, and obviously very, very important. But the Westfields are your friend, not your enemy, and they do an amazing job at getting the right tenants in the right area. And I hear so much negativity about shopping centers, but I've actually never had that experience. I've had over 75 commercial leases in Westfields alone, and I've never really had a problem with them. If you've got to ask the questions, you've got to open up dialogue, and you've got to move quickly. I mean, you know, if you've got competition coming up, I think when we started Gloss, we had Diva coming up behind us, Jay's Room, Equip, with accessories and cosmetics, and you know, you want to be leasing and moving quite quickly. So we moved quickly and accurately, and at some points we were doing 8 to 10 stores a year. Which is quite a lot for a small business. Sure.
And so what would you say your strategy was around commercial leasing? I mean, did you have a strategy per se?
I'd say the strategy really is to know the centers. I mean, you know, it's very easy to open a shop in the wrong location. Yeah. I would fly to Western Australia and spend 2 or 3 days walking the center at different times and have lunch there, have breakfast there, just to see the traffic flow. I've also never been one on going into brand new centers. I find that it's a bit risky. That would be a strategy to avoid. A brand new center, obviously they have CapEx to spend and it's very enticing for them to pay for the fit out. But I think also you can end up in the wrong location. I mean, you just don't know the traffic flow of the center. Yeah. So I've always avoided that. Established centers, established walkways. Certainly you want to be around brands that are similar to you, and the very basics of it is the food courts are together, and you want to get around the cosmetics and accessories together and the high-end fashions together. You want to stay in those type of areas.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, stating the obvious, but location is everything, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. And that goes back to actually going to a center and spending 2 or 3 days. I mean, it's a luxury to spend 2 or 3 days walking around centers when you've got big businesses and you're a CEO. But I did all the leasing myself. I never really hired any agents or anyone to do external leasing. I felt that it was so important to get it right.
Yeah, yeah. And I think by and large, you did get it right.
Yeah, I mean, I think I made 2 or 3 stores where I would have liked to have changed, but you know, that's not too bad out of 60 or 70 stores. So.
Exactly. Very good. Jeremy, the next question then, what was your approach to attracting customers? Obviously, customers are the lifeblood of all businesses. You know, what is your particular strategy?
I mean, if you go back to 2003, I mean, you had really no internet. I mean, 2010 was when the iPhone came out. So, you know, I come out of advertising. So obviously I had a massive background in marketing. Look, a lot of the work we did was store promotion back then. So it would be constant store promotion. We were one of the first companies with Insane Fashions to actually design software to message people. It sounds crazy now when you talk about technology, but we actually designed software to SMS message people. But we did massive email campaigns, and we just, every time something new came out, as soon as Facebook came out, we would market on Facebook, and then Instagram comes out. You have to be so constant. I mean, TikTok's out, Snapchat. You have to be on all channels. Marketing is relentless. It's not something that you do in little patches and do it when things are slow. It's a 1-year program. Every year I program it out and I say, this is what we're gonna do, budget it and attack it. A marketing is an attack, and you have to be so relentless at it.
Yeah, and so that was your thing. I mean, as soon as new technology and new platforms came out, you embraced them and used them for all they were worth.
I loved it. I actually I love seeing things on TikTok. I love the fact there's technology out there that's always bringing people. I mean, it's amazing now. You can put I mean, you and I are doing a Zoom, interview. It's amazing how many people you can reach now. I mean, when I started out in the 80s and 90s, CRM systems were kind of like an unknown thing. I mean, to reach people, you really had to work really a lot harder. I think it's amazing. Technology is amazing now.
Yeah, and you've always embraced technology, haven't you?
Always. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a differentiator. I mean, nowadays you have to be up with technology all the time, or you get left behind real quick.
Yeah, and say for example Gloss, which I'm not involved in now, but it's young teenage girls that have got a limited budget and they shop at certain times. I mean, they've got a hell of a lot of social media to look at. I mean, a lot of them are on Snapchat, TikTok, and multiple social media channels. You've got to make sure that you're actually putting something to them of value. And one of the things with marketing I see is not just posting a picture of a girl doing a lipstick. It has to be funny. It has to be beautiful. It has to be of value to that person. And you still see fashion companies that are struggling with their marketing even now, even though they've got quite big businesses. But the ones that get it right, I mean, you only have to look at some of the influencers now. They really know how to market themselves, and they do a great job.
Great. Well, look, thanks for those.
No, that's all right. I hope that
those nuggets. Jeremy, moving to the final question I had for you today. For the benefit of the audience, what are, say, 3 of the biggest roadblocks to creating a retail chain like you did in your career?
3 of the biggest roadblocks. I mean, I guess the first one that always comes to mind is financing it. I was lucky with Gloss to have the money from the sale of another business to sit back, take my time and develop the brand. I don't think that's always the way it works when you first start out. And when you're first starting out, of course, money is always the hurdle. I would always say that you're never going to have enough. That's just the way it works. I mean, I've done shop fittings and budgeted 350,000 for small stores that ended up 500,000. So it can be tricky. You might hit hurdles. So you've just got to have the funding, and how you get that funding is, of course, is up to you. But I think the roadblocks also is supply. So a second one would be supply product. I've had literally, I remember one Christmas, we had 2 40-foot containers drop off the side of a shipping boat, and we lost our Christmas.
Literally drop off a boat, right?
They literally dropped off in a storm.
Yeah.
So I was told anyway. And even though we were insured, I mean, you just don't have the product in the store, and then you lose customer base, you lose traction. There's hurdles going to come up, and I don't think anyone can foresee some of the problems. And I think when you reached out to me about this interview, one of the things that I think is so important when I first started out in retail was having people, not just mentors. I mean, you can have a mentor, but having a small group of people that have been in retail for years that can literally say to you, hey, a shipping container might fall off a boat. I mean, it's just so unexpected. You need someone to flag some of the things that are going to come up. And once you put them into your working day and you understand them, they don't become a problem.
Yeah. So you can mitigate those types of risks, can't you?
So, totally. As long as you know they're coming up. And of course, you need a small group of people like yourself, people like myself. I'm always available to younger retailers. Over the last, say, 2 years, I've casually spoken to quite a few. And some of the things I flagged, they're amazed that might happen. And of course, 6 months later, you get a text message, it happened. And these things are really important to know about. So I would say those two things, getting a group of people and obviously funding. I think the third roadblock is your own energy and your own passion. It might be a strange one to talk about. I'm passionate. I'm always passionate about everything, as everyone knows me. They always think I look excited, but I think a lot of businesses just run out of steam, whether they get too big and they become a little slow and the staff just get disinterested. The products are getting a little tired. I think that's a big roadblock.
You're maintaining the rage.
What you mentioned when we first started, it was fast and furious, if you like. But actually, I maintained that for years. I mean, I want to have an energy in a business, and I think just some brands get tired of their own business, and I think leadership needs to change. Sometimes you've got to step. I stepped away from Gloss, I think year 10 or 11, and I hired a CEO, and then I just overviewed it.
Yeah.
I think then it's a lot easier to maintain the passion when you're not working, you know, 10, 12, 14 hours a day.
Sure.
So that would be a roadblock, and keeping fit and going to the gym and keeping fit. A lot of new owners in small businesses, they tend to work so hard and they forget about themselves.
Yeah. No.
So that's a big thing for me.
Good advice. So Jeremy, that sort of, I guess, ends the formal question part of the discussion. I just wanted to get a sense from you, if there's anyone in the audience who's curious to find out more and maybe engage with you in some way, what's the best way for them to get in touch? I mean, are you active on LinkedIn or one of the other social channels?
I've just become a member of LinkedIn. I've joined up in the last 6 months, and I have had a lot, like yourself, contacted me and a few other people for podcasts. I think for small businesses starting out, it is so important to reach out. And of course, I'm available on LinkedIn and they can reach out. I had a small company. I mean, it's just an example. Someone reached out to me. I won't mention the name of the company because it's quite big now. This is about 3 years ago. They reached out to me informally, and they were going to launch menswear. And I literally sat with them and said, don't do it. Don't bother. It's a small market in Australia. Launch women's wear. And they said, well, we're men's designers. And I said, I don't care. Launch women's wear. It's the same amount of work and 20 times the market. Yeah. They are now, I think they've got 25 stores and they're doing very, very well.
And so they followed your advice?
They literally followed the advice from that day. I think they looked a little confused when I said it. I mean, they were looking for money and they were looking for different investors. And that's actually not what you need. What you need is someone to say, don't do that. And I think, you know, I don't consult. I do a bit of pro bono work for people and stuff now. But the most important thing is to just reach out to people like yourself, to myself, or anyone that's done multiple businesses, multiple disciplines. And sometimes that person just say, don't go in that direction, and make a big difference.
And I know that's something that you've always said. And as you say, the subject of this podcast, you know, don't be afraid to ask questions. You know, there's help out there, and don't be too proud to reach out.
Yeah, I mean, I see businesses that are struggling, and they come up for sale, and then you meet the people who own them or the people that are involved in them, and they just haven't asked enough questions. And I see it all the time. It's like, you know, you've just got to go out and ask questions, ask everyone. I mean, I drive people crazy. I moved into hospitality, Peter, a few years ago. I wanted to try it. So I opened a bar called Assembly Bar. And, you know, we ended up with a $5.5 million a year turnover out of a small bar. Yeah, it was great. I mean, but I literally drove people mad. Firstly, I don't drink much. I'm vegan. I don't go to bars for the last 20 years anyway. And so I literally had to ask, what the hell is a cocktail? How do you make them? I drove people crazy. And I went to Italy and I met people who know how to use wood-fired ovens. I went to competitions. I literally went to cocktail award competitions and got involved before I opened it. And when I opened it, I felt like I may not have ever worked in this industry, but I do have good knowledge of it. And I keep asking questions now as we open different hospitality businesses now.
And doing your research up front is always critical, isn't it?
Up front, but do it all the time. I mean, the market is changing. I mean, your 19-year-old female customer base is shifting around through different social media, but they're shifting in style and taste as they move up. You've got to really, really ask the question every day, not just when you start the business.
Yeah, good advice. Well, Jeremy, it's been a great pleasure to have you on the show today. You've really been very generous with your thoughts and ideas. Really great to catch up again and share your wisdom.
Yeah, well, it's lovely to see you after all these years. And hopefully we'll catch up in person. I'm actually visiting a family member in Queensland at the moment, but when I'm back in Sydney, I'd love to catch up with you in person.
I'd like to do so.
And thanks again.
Just finally, this is Peter Crewe-Brown signing off from episode 7 of the Mind Over Matters podcast.
Thanks very much, Peter.
Thank you.